Alrighty, we are going to work through growing pains as this progresses. I've got a little setup here on a ladder that is right kind of just off to my side, as close as I can get you to the work with me still being able to paint decent. As you saw, the drawing didn't work out too well, so I've got to get this camera for you guys at an angle where you're getting something out of it, but I can also paint. So before we get into it, I did go over the area kind of where I paint, but it was more just to show you some of the 8x10s and things, and I don't believe I went into the materials and stuff I use. Don't get too wrapped up in those things. I think most folks, when they get into to art, they think that it's about the brushes and the materials and the paints and the knives and things, and it's not, right? If a world-class artist could paint with ketchup in their finger crayon. So it's not about that. It's about using things that you're comfortable with, you know how to manipulate, you know how to mix, you know how it's going to react, you know how much paint to put into the brush relative to water. For me, that's acrylic, and that comes through brush mileage. Craig Nelson, one of my favorite instructional artists. I have a book, 60 Minutes to Better Painting. I believe I mentioned it in one of my walk-around videos. Phenomenal artist, great teacher. And he talks about brush mileage, which is practice, 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 practice. So this is not baking a cake. It's not about 2 parts white and 1 part yellow, and that's not what this is. This is looking and making estimations and knowing, because I've done it 1,000 times, how much of each to mix, that kind of thing. So anyway, I will take this down. Here's my palette. Now this is how I do this. It's a makeshift of a Masterson Stay Wet palette. So a company called Masterson makes these, and it's for water-based medium like watercolor, gouache, acrylic. But when you buy them, they have this little filament piece of paper that underneath it is a sponge, and you're supposed to get the sponge wet and put the paper on it so your paint stays moist underneath and doesn't dry out. I hated it because I could not control the water. As I mentioned before, I love the result of oil more than watercolor. So I do not use much water relative to many acrylic artists. So because of that, I want to control the water. I don't put that much in, so I hated that sponge with the piece of paper. So I had a piece of glass. I took a piece of glass out of a frame, took a glass cutter and cut it the right size. So this piece of glass underneath it, I have painted a medium tone. So I just took black and white and painted the bottom of this tray and put the glass in it, so that when I'm mixing, I can tell how dark something is relative to a medium tone and how light something is. So when I'm mixing, when I mix a color, even if it's a light color, when I put it up in here on this white canvas, it's going to look really dark. That's why some artists put a little bit of a wash or stain on their canvas. I usually don't. Mentioned before, I did it on those little ones for some reason, mindlessly. I may modify that. I don't know. So that's my palette. It comes with a little lock top. So it's like a Tupperware kind of top, and I take a mister bottle when I'm done each session, and I just give it a couple sprays, and then I put that on top, snap it down, and that'll keep that paint, at least the piles of paint, wet for a week or so. The paint that I've mixed out here dries really quickly because it is acrylic, so I scrape that up. often, and you'll see me do that many times while I'm painting. And I have paper towels that I wipe that stuff up with, and I have a little scraper, little razor scraper that I scrape that out of there. So anyway, that's just want to show that. My brushes, nothing fancy. I'm a big cheap brush guy. I have no problem as long as the bristles don't come out. That's the key. Bristles don't come out. When you're buying a brush, ideally you want to buy one that snaps back, so when you bend it, it pops back. It doesn't stay bent over. Most of what I use, as you see, are called filberts. They are like a flat. It's a filbert nut. That's why the name on that. Here's a flat, a big flat. When you use flats long enough, they kind of become filberts. They get worn out, and many artists have, as their flats wore into this shape, they really kind of like that better. So I use a lot of filberts. I do use some flats. I have a bright, which is just a short flat that I do use some, and then I've got some little pointy brushes and things that I will use occasionally, but I try to use the bigger brushes for most of the block in. I will use a palette knife as well. This is sitting in my little water tub because I used it to get my the white out. So here are my paints. This is my white that I use. I'm not a Golden or Liquitex anything particular. As you see, I love Grumbacher and others. Most of what I use are Liquitex heavy body and the Goldens, which are heavy body. Both are fantastic. I use an extremely limited palette, meaning I don't use many colors at all. Most artists, even professional artists, use many colors. If you are an artist who does a lot of floral flowers and things that have magentas and all these unique colors and 50 different colors of green, they have a lot of different colors in the palette. I just wanted to learn how to paint basically from the primaries, mix any color I want, and that way I don't have to go hunting down for some specific paint if I run out. I've got a yellow, I got a red, I got a blue, and for the most part you can mix anything. These are the artist primary. This is Cad yellow medium, this is Cad red light, this is actually a Naphthol red light. Ultramarine blue, this is burnt sienna. It is a earth tone. Most artists would call this an earth tone. There's raw siennas and raw umbers and all kinds of different earth tone colors. Yellow ochre is another. I use burnt sienna. These two mixed together make a very dark, almost black, opaque color, and a lot of times for my darks I will use these two instead of black. I do use black. Sometimes I will use it for a black. Mostly I use it to make some really interesting greens and violets, because black acts a lot like blue when you're mixing. This black, which is a Mars black, is a pretty transparent, ivory black is as well, relatively transparent color, so it's not very opaque. You can kind of see through it. So if you take red and black and mix a little white with it, it will make a purple, kind of like red and blue. Yellow and black will make a green, very much like yellow and blue. You need to practice that, and you need to very well ingrain in your brain the color wheel so that you understand when you see a color, an orange, whatever, you will know how to mix it. If it's a dark color, like a dark orange, I will warn you to not take these two colors, right, which make orange. Yellow and red makes orange. It'll make a real bright orange, and if you've got a dark orange like on a pumpkin, in the shadow of a pumpkin, the tendency is to common sense add black because you want to make it darker. Don't do that. Mix the complement. So if you take a color, in this case we're talking orange, The opposite of orange, knowing the color wheel, is blue. So if you add some blue, it will gray it. It will take the chroma down. It won't be so vibrant. It won't be that vibrant orange. It'll gray it a little bit. It will darken it a little bit. That is probably going to be a more pleasant orange than mixing black, which makes grays. So I'm trying to think. I'm sure I'm missing lots of things. I do use paper towels. I will dip into that water sparingly, sometimes just to rinse a brush. I will take paper towels a lot of times because you're not going to be able to see a lot of this. I will try over these 10 paintings to do a little bit of show and tell while I'm painting. Most of the time I'm going to show you the canvas, but I will be mixing into that water and just dabbing the brush out on a paper towel just to get some of the excess out. I do use one of these old silver sneaker kind of openers, because these are horrible to get open when the paint dries. The Liquitex are a lot better because they're bigger. So if you get paint like that and you're old like me, you better get you one of those. Anyway, this is a holder for my, as you can see, I have bazillions of brushes. And I will probably, within the body of a painting, depending on the size of the painting, I may go through 5 or 6 brushes, just different sizes and things. So that is it. I think we'll just start with this one. This is one that I've been wanting to paint for quite a while. Shouldn't be too terribly tough, as it's, for the most part, in shadow or in light, right? It's the sky, and then the figures and the foreground are in shadow. It's not black. And as I get into painting some of that detail, that very faint detail, I might take my surface over there and hook it up so I get a little bit better resolution than a print on paper. But I do want you to notice, as I work through these figures, and even here, it's still in shadow. They are in shadow, even though there are some hints of flesh tone versus blue jean shorts, whatever. I don't want to put these in light. There's a little hint of light up here that is much lighter than anything down here, and I just have to think about that as I'm blocking these things in. But what's critical about this painting, the tough part of this painting, is going to be making them against that very bright background, having that drawing, having those shapes perfect. You can tell Peyton, it's not just her angle, she's muscular. I need to make sure I get that, but not make her look like, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So that's part of it. I'll have fun. It all should be fun, but I'll have fun up here in the sky, and then we'll get a little bit more focused down in there. So one last thing before we get to painting, and I will try when we're doing these to not yap so much. I'll tell you what, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this set. I got it on a ladder. So one of the things, I want to just get into painting and pushing paint around, because that's what's fun. That's what you want to see. And this should be fun. We'll make sure this is a fun process. If it's painful, you won't do it. It's similar to getting in shape, right? People fail getting in shape because it's work. Don't make this work, make it fun. Let's see. Excuse me, I'm fighting to go. Back that up a little. Last thing. This is important. You need to think about what light this painting is going to be hanging in. What I mean by that is, I have an open window, as you can tell. I have an open window that has, at the moment, warm light coming in because the sun is shining straight in. Usually when I'm up here painting, that is a cool light because the light is not aiming directly in the window. It's a reflected blue sky. So it is a cool light, extremely different, extremely critical that you think about that, because there may be moments of this, especially at the end of the painting, that if the light that's going to be on this painting hanging on the wall is warm light, an incandescent orange bulb from inside your house, you better paint it in that light because it's going to look different. And above me, I have a light that is incandescent, it's warm. And this may not show too much, but let me see if you see the difference of how dramatic this can be. I'm going to close the shades a little so that that warm light is not shining directly in here. I'm not sure this will show extremely well, but we'll take a painting that I've done years and years ago. Just hold it. Now, if I turn the incandescent light off, this is still a warm light, but it is not directly on it. And what should happen, if I took this outside on a cloudy day, you'd see there are purples, there are cools, there's blues, there's different temperatures, especially in the reflected light, that will pop under cool light. When it's a harsh, warm light, those things disappear. So let me see if you see the difference when this opens. Not sure that shows. And then we'll turn the incandescent light off. So those lights will change, fairly dramatically the way the painting looks. And you need to paint under those different kinds of lights. Not the light that makes the painting look the best, the light the painting is going to hang in, because that's what everybody's going to see. So just think through that. That's all. I'm going to quit yapping, and we're going to get to pushing paint around. All right, we're going to give this a shot. It's kind of in my way, but we're going to make it work. I think if I do this, all right, let's just do it. So I'm going to very quickly work this here in, as well as the foreground. And I want to make sure that I lose these drawings. I know that sounds crazy. I want to lose the edge, because these are not exact little perfect matches, but they show to me where they need to be, height, width, that kind of thing. So I'm going to barely lose that edge, because I do not want these to look painted up to. I don't want a hard edge around them. I don't want them to look like just stickers stuck on. They're part of the scene. So I'm going to lose that. Try to make it look organic. Try to not make it look like it's painted up to. But because they're acrylics, I have the ability to paint this wet into wet. So put these blues down and then take white with the dirty brush and work kind of a form of clouds to sky. Then I can let it dry and then go back over them with more acrylic paint. And that's what's wonderful about acrylics, is they stay wet for a little bit, but it's not like I have to wait weeks to paint on top of them, which you would have to do with oil. So I'm going to mix a relative color here, blue. It's not like real blue, right? I want to try my best to match the value. Remember, the value, light to dark. Even if I don't get this blue perfect, if it's a little green, if it's a little more blue than it should be, it's okay as long as I get the value. That's what's critical. If that's too dark or that's too light, it's not going to work. So I'm going to dip my brush, I'm using a big flap, into a little bit of water. I'm going to take some blue, I'm going to take some white. Now I know that as I paint this, I will be painting with white into it, and it will lighten some, but I want to make a decent attempt at getting the value right. Not too far off from just, you know, this very darkest, most vivid, if you will, color. Now it's going on kind of transparent, so I can see through that, which means I've got a little bit too much water, which I knew. I do that at first to spread it around. What I'm doing is sometimes there's a hair or something gets on the canvas, and I use the brush to get that out. So I'm going down here and I'm going to use more paint, not water. Whatever water was in here is fine. I'm putting more paint on here. Now I had a little estimation of where I thought that cloud was relative to, here's the top of here. It's about, relative to the distance, that's probably close. So anyway, I want to put this on here. I'm going to go ahead because this is a thick frame, and I'm not going to frame this. It's a thick frame that this is on. Then I want to go ahead and, while I've got that color, put some of the paint on the sides, is all I did there. I'm going to also take that same color I mixed. Again, is this critically important to the story? No. If I asked Amber and Peyton to go back and reflect on this scene or what they remember of it, obviously they're not going to remember that there was a little opening in the clouds up here. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't try to put it in there. And if there's something that bothers me, if there's 2 or 3 holes in a row that look weird or something, I will change it. Right? That's not important to the story. The things that are important is them and how they're standing there and the effect of light. Usually it's always the effect of light. Painting the top. I should have got a little water. I apologize. I'm struggling over here. So while that's still wet, I'm picking up pure white. I'm just picking up white in a dirty brush. And I'm going to just blend that. Now, I don't like to get technique-y, because some of this stuff's like, oh, it's Bob Ross technique-y or something, and I'm not knocking Bob Ross. I just, I know how, just through practice, I know how paint reacts, the acrylics that I use and how much the brushes I use, how much pressure I put on, how much water I mix, that kind of thing, and how quickly I can go back in and do what I'm doing, because there's a point of no return that you want to stop and not do what I'm doing, and it's really only a few minutes, and then you're in trouble. Again, I'm still picking up just pure white as I come down because the sky is more saturated. You know, you think you're on the beach at the horizon where the sky meets the water, way out yonder, miles and miles out. There's atmosphere there, right? There's reflection of sky, there's reflections of water, and the saturation, how blue, how vivid the sky is, lessens, if you will, becomes fainter as it gets overhead. It becomes more vibrant. So I want to think about that when I'm doing this. So again, this is not rocket science. I did add a little bit of water because this is dragging a little. I need to get a little bit more paint. Again, for the most part, I'm getting white, not much blue. And I just want it to read okay, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not after photographic realism here, but I do want, all I'm doing right now is I'm not worried as much about transitions. I just want to make sure I'm covering the canvas because there's some little spots where the paint got thin. So I am, paint this side. Just get more paint the side. And this paint is already starting to set up, if you will, and dry a little bit. So I gotta be careful. I'm gonna go ahead though, and I'm gonna go for it. Pick up white. I'm just picking up white, gobbling some white on there. And I'm not being too careful. Now, if I stop right there, that kind of already starts reading, right, as a cloud. And have fun with this. I'm going to go over that edge to make that softer. Little bit of water, mostly white. Again, I'm picking up a big chunk of white. Right, starts kind of reading like it's a cloud. Now you can do this wet into wet, and you need to do it as you're familiar, as you feel comfortable with it once you've practiced a while. But if you want and you're like, that's a little scary, because it is a little scary. I'm using brush in all kinds of different angles here. Then you can wait until that is dry, right? And then you can go wet paint on dry paint, which is much more forgiving, and I will definitely show you as this progresses how to fix boo-boos, because John has committed lots of boo-boos over the years, and that's important. You know, screwing up, it is important. That's how you learn how to fix it. So learning how to fix problems is critical, because I promise you, every single one of these paintings, I'm going to cause problems. I'm going to do things that I screw up, and knowing how to fix them is critical. And sometimes, as Bob Ross would say, those happy accidents, a lot of times when I screw up an area, quoting in the air, screw up, the way you go about fixing it is a pleasing result. It may be better than what the painting was turning out to be. So it's having the confidence that no matter what I do, I can fix it. And I apologize if my head's in the way. I'm just trying to paint this edge here. And we'll take several breaks. Part of it is my body gets tired. Oops, sorry about that. My body gets tired from doing this, surprisingly, especially when I'm out of practice. And I will go through periods when I don't talk much. I'll try not to. I'm sure you probably want that. You probably don't want me talking much, blabbling. I just am trying to, best I can, share what's going through my mind. So I'm going to pick up some more white. I'm going to pick up some blue as well. So basically what I'm doing is there's a mix down here that's almost all white. It's got a little bit of blue in it. And it's just this big area where I was mixing earlier. So I'm just mixing into that. So it's not just harsh white. And you notice I'm not being perfect because I don't want it to be, because that's not, right? I want these little areas where there's a little more blue and a little more white. That's what's there. So don't sit here and kind of do like I did here. Don't level that out. Make sure the canvas is covered, which is all I'm doing. I'm trying to have fun, smear paint around, and if I'm lucky, that process is creating something for me. And if nothing else, I'm just covering the canvas. I'm getting it covered so then I can come back later. If I don't like the way this looks, then I'll go wet paint on dry paint once it dries. But the effect, and I'll come back here and put some of these little holes in here if I feel like, if it needs them. The main thing is I'm covering the canvas, I'm getting rid of that edge. I don't want that edge there. So again, pure white down here. This is wet. It's getting close to that danger point where there's parts that are dry and parts that are wet, and if I'm not careful, I'll pick up some of that blue paint, and that's when you get in trouble. So you're much better off, if it's questionable, you're much better off to stop and let dry. I just want to, I'm barely pushing that brush against the canvas. Right? I don't know, it may sound like I'm pushing, scrubbing hard, but I am not. I just want to let that barely come out. And to be honest, if I stopped right there and didn't do anything else, this would work. Because once I put these objects in here, you're not going to really look up here. I don't want this to be, I want there to be some break here, but for right now, that's really all I need to do up here. You notice, doesn't take long, don't take long. Down in here, there's a little bit more going on because there's some shapes to these clowns. I'll probably do some of that once that background dries, and then I can put a little bit more fluffiness, because that's important to this painting. They are technically above the clouds, right? This is PikesPeak. That's the first layer of clouds that are on top of it. That's what makes this cool. Taking, again, pure white. Still got that big brush. And I say pure white, you notice it's a dirty brush. And I'm just skimming, because you see how there's a little break there. There's a little stuff going on. You can do that right now, right? If I can do it right now, I might as well go ahead and put some little hints of that in there. And for all I know, that's all I'll need to do. I won't have to touch this anymore. But again, it's the beautiful thing about acrylics. I always can come back in here. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to bring a drink up here next time. These are very from the hip and unprofessional, and I apologize. It's just me being me. And this is how I paint. I just come up here, and another key component I didn't mention, if you're going to take this hobby up, put a lot of time into it. Lots of drawing, lots of painting, paint everything, draw everything. But once you get to a point where you're like, I really, really want to do this, set up an area in your house that's dedicated to this. Because if every time you have you feel like painting, you get the urge to paint, if you got to go in a closet and take your stuff out, because I used to do this, and it takes you half an hour to get everything out, you're not going to paint. So don't do that. Find an area in your house that you're willing to give up for this. And, I've got this area here. I'm lucky that Amber has always supported me with all of my stupid hobbies. And this one too. And, in this house, I don't have a whole lot of options in this old house, but I do now that the kids have grown. I guess I could move into one of the bedrooms. Wow, I didn't think of that. Yeah. The other house, I basically had a room that was dedicated for my painting, or at least half a room. So I am right now seeing how opaque, how thick can I put the paint on here and not completely lose the drawing. And it's pretty good. Main thing, I would rather have to redraw that than that look like I painted up to the edge of it. Right now, there's some places that are white, and when I'm done with this, when I think I'm done with this, and I draw and I paint them in, very likely I'll have to come back in and carve some of these whites around there. Pretty much every time I have to do things like that. You'd think I could nail it the first time, but yeah. So I could, if I wanted, take little puffs of thick white paint and start this process. I'm not going to do that, because this is that no man's land. I'm in a bad shape here, where if I keep working this, then I'm gonna get in trouble, because I'm gonna want to work some of these blues. You notice here, and I don't understand this type of science, but this blue is getting fainter, and then down here in the clouds, and maybe because that blue is beside this white, but this looks darker, it looks more vibrant than this white up here. So I want to make sure I will come back in after this dries. I don't want to do it now. And put that in. And I could put some of this fluff in. Don't want to, a little dangerous. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to wash my brush out for the first time. And all I'm going to do is put a warm underpainting, this whole bottom. And it probably doesn't show on the camera, on the video, but I want to make it the lightest tone that I see in here, which is warm. Very important for me. I'm a temperature painter, as I walked through a little bit ago. Temperature sounds weird. How cool or how warm is something relative to what it's beside, and that's what's important. Most people would say red is a warm color, but there are colors of red that if you put beside orange, they look cool. And that's the importance of temperature, engaging temperature. This is cool. No one would question this is in the cool range. This being warm, to me, is important to have those two in this painting. Some people may just look and go, oh, well, they're rocks, and let me make a gray. Let me take black and white. Don't do that. Don't do that. Try not to ever use black if you don't have to. So I'm going to take a warm undertone. When I put it down here, you're going to go, that's wrong, John. You missed it, because there's so much dark in here. I'm taking burnt sienna, which is a warm earth tone. I'm not saying I'm just going to use that, but that's not too far from where I want to go. Now I may add a little bit, a smidge of blue. Smidge of blue. And yeah, I'm going to put a little blue and a little yellow. What does that do? What does blue and yellow do? Blue and yellow make green. Green is the opposite, the contrast of red. And burnt sienna is a form of red. So as much as you may be tempted to go black, and I could have gone black and it might have worked, I am not, try not to do that, because when things get a little bit more, I'm trying to think of the word. There's sometimes, especially in faces and things, that you really are going to get in trouble if something looks muddy, and that's the danger of using black. Anyway, I am going to. What I'm doing is, this is going on pretty thin. Burnt sienna is a very transparent color. I don't want this to be thin, so I'm making it a little darker, but I'm making it thicker. I want it to cover. That's probably closer. Not that I won't put, I may put areas in here that are lighter than this, as long as it reads well. Now, one thing I didn't mention, which is an advanced topic, but it is squinting. So as I'm talking, I'm just mixing more paint. More burnt sienna, more yellow, more blue. I'm just really getting more paint on my brush. And if it's different, I don't care. And that's another probably important thing. Some artists would say, if you're painting a landscape or you're painting the sky, mix up enough paint so you don't have to go down and keep remixing. Make these big piles of paint, and a lot of oil artists do that. I don't, and a lot of the reason I don't is because it dries so quick anyway. But I'm glad it doesn't, because I like the variation. When you go out and look at a landscape, there's 1,000 different greens. If you make everything the same exact color green, that's going to look awful, in my opinion. So I think you should, number one, it's a good exercise to continue to mix mix the same color over and over, and if it's not exactly right, good. You know, nature's not like that. So don't do that. Don't make these big piles, and then your painting to me will look, I don't mean to say childish, but it will look like, you know, you'll have green trees and brown bark and right, blue sky and orange sun, and I don't want that. It's kind of like what I'm putting in right here. If that was the extent of the ground, that's not that ain't good. So I'm gonna I'm trying to decide where this, maybe about like that. And again, this is just the first attempt. If I don't get this covered, there's little areas that aren't covered, no problem. I mean, these are acrylics. I can layer over and over. I love the thought of saying the word layer. That's the beauty. Not that you can't do that with oil. Hello. She went wine tasting with Andrew, Sylvia, Peyton. But I'm at a pretty good point here anyway to about stop to let this dry. Because I'm going to let this dry. We'll go back over this. We'll go back into this. I will wait for you next time to block them in, because that's a little bit more what people are interested in, even though it just takes some time. It's no big deal. So we will pause for now, let that dry off, and get back at it. As I step away, this is a little light. I want that to stand out, so I'll probably let this dry, go over it with a little bit of a darker wash. That's what I'm thinking. Just kill it all at once. But Peyton and Amber are starting to read better. Got to kill a little bit of this back here. Just picking the white. A little too much. can't see, but it doesn't really matter. Don't want to put too much up in there. Good. I need to work on Amber's face a little bit. The struggle is real. Let's see, I gotta make that look more like her. Let me see here. There's a, it's almost there. Let's see. Some color. I gotta keep it light though. Keep it light. That's better. Hard stuff, hard stuff. Hard stuff. Oh, that's better. Dark, dark, dark. See, her hair comes more like that. Connect that back here. Yeah, that's better. Don't really, this stands out, but it's there. She's got on a jacket. She does. Yes, she does. Make it a little more pronounced, I think. So it's obviously something sharper, a little sharper. And I'll remove it if I don't like it, if it just don't make sense, even though it's there. She's got on a jacket, Peyton's got on a tank top, which doesn't make sense, but it's what they were, how they rolled that day. So, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Drive me crazy. Okay, Peyton, let's see. It helps me to say their names. I don't know who I'm painting. Oh, yeah. is sharp. It damn is sharp. I'll leave that for now, even though that looks a little sharp. You should always paint it exactly how you see it. But then at the end, you gotta put the subject away and make this make sense, because nobody's gonna look at this. Nobody's gonna look at that. Clean this space up here. All right, let's darken. It's been long enough. Just put a little wash over this, darken that a little bit. Yeah, let me think how dark I want to go. The picture, the photo is this bright, but I like this effect. This is darker. Let me set it back. I need to darken it a little bit, just a little bit, so we'll mix up. What do we want? Some blue, a little blue, a little burnt sienna, a little blue. Put some more blue on. Put some more blue on. Actually did not do the sides very good. What a loser. Oh, I'll worry about that later. I'll worry about that later. Hardly any water. Not any water. Just stumbling. Just a little bit, just a little bit. Just kill that, stood out too much. If that was oil, no way. You'd have to repaint every bit of that. Or I guess you could wait a month. Or I don't know. Oh, sorry, hit the key. That's more better. That's more better. That makes me happy. All right. So let's where do we want to go? What do I need to work on? I've got some ugly spots in here. In reality, these mountains, this little mountain goes right and tickles that. It really does. So let's figure that out. Let's take some blue and some of our mud here in the canvas. Let's take some blue, and I just tested it. Y'all can see what you see right here. I just tested on that piece of paper to see how dark that is, and it's pretty daggone transparent. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to make that. I'm gonna have to mix up some actual paint. That was just mostly water. I actually try to match that color, which is a little bit greenish. Little bit greenish. It's pretty dark, pretty dark. bit lighter, just a touch of white, maybe too much white. Maybe I added too much white. No, okay. Make it come up there a little bit more than it really does. Take on to have some white. Paint on it. I actually may just, I don't want to invent, but I really need this to come up a little bit more right in there so it really makes sense. This I'm going to have to let dry because that's not very, that's being transparent right there. All right, let's see. Clean these spots up. What else? What else do I need to do to amber and paint? I normally don't talk to myself doing that because the camera's on. You all know that. Let's see here. This is that reading like her. It's close, it's close, it's close. It's close to painting. It is. It's close. Simple shape. Simple shape. Hairs like that. Camera's hair comes more back like that. Yeah, that's it, that's it. Alright, so we're going to straighten this up a little bit more. Straighten that, clean that up. It's Peyton, and she's got bigger legs than that. She's got bigger legs than that. A little more water. Not going on very good there. That's okay. That's all right. Just the tip of that brush, just the tip of that brush. A little bit of hair's going soft, soft, soft. A little bit more opaque. A little bit more opaque. A little darker. Starting to look a little more like them. Peyton has a off-white, dirty white emblem on her shirt, and it's about the same as her pants, but it's got to stay in shadow. That is the absolute most important thing. If I put this in there and it looks anywhere like this, it's too bright. I gotta keep it in shadow. It's not important that it's perfect. It's just gotta be an impression of that thing. And if it ends up being too bright, I'll pull the old scumble trick again. And this is not important, but it is. Peyton would know she had a shirt on that was a certain kind. Nobody else cares, but she cares. Let's look here. So I'll reshape some stuff. Her legs. Okay, but I think her legs come up more on this side. This is the padoodling stuff. Little padoodly take forever. Amber's like, why don't you stop? It looks like them. Because I can't help it. All right, let's see. This side comes up more. Stupid little stuff. Nobody would see that but me. Nobody. See, nobody's going to get this close. Well, people do, but they shouldn't get this close. Gosh, dude. Let me. I know that's the way it actually is. But I'm going to make this just a little smaller. And I want to get rid of that. I'm just going to freehand do it. We'll see how that looks. Oh, that just needs to. I'll let Amber decide if she wants to keep that or not. I don't think she'll care. Let's see here. This actually comes down and then out, down and then out, like that. Again, nobody's going to look at this, but it still looks like it's out too far. But I don't think I drew it out too far. But we're going to take it a little bit more. I'll probably play with it some more, but I'm pretty much, if it reads way back here, see, it reads pretty good. don't want to put too much, not too much detail. You'll kill it. So, what we will do though, after taking a drink of protein shake and coffee, is we are going to take a palette knife and I'm just going to cake on some clouds. I want it to be really thick. I don't want it to be standing up like that, but I want it to be thick. Just in certain spots. And it won't stay like that because they're acrylics, but I'm really trying to put them where they're at. Again, not that anybody's ever gonna care. Let's see here. I like to do this where I can. And if I don't like it, I'll paint over it, but I like the effect. So when people get up here, they see it's really just a nice stroke. But if you do it right, in the right spot, it'll read really pretty. There we go. There we go. Peyton's got one right there. That's nice. That's nice. Beautiful. All right. Let me see. I will continue to play. That may need to come out just a bit there. And I'll probably play with their arms a little bit. Hers still not reading right. But for the sake of the video, we're pretty much done, I think, for this one. So that's the zoomed out finished product. I'll probably do a little bit more just so that doesn't stand out so much. But from a distance, this is, and I haven't been looking at this one so much. I've been looking at that one. And you see how much detail is in the foreground, but I don't want to do that because I like this effect. So I've kind of met in the middle, I think. Those highlights really pop out too much, and I don't like that. That's not what it's about. So it's from a distance, which is, I'm probably 4 or 5 feet, 6 feet from it, so that's about how I want it to read. I wouldn't want this any lighter than that. I may even darken it even more. So anyway, there you go. So I believe I'm done with the painting. I spent a few more minutes, maybe 5 or 10 more minutes. Opened up the sky a little bit because this was not here. It was just this, which is pretty much what's in the photo, but to me, my eye jumped up there, so I just opened it up a little bit more. I'm trying to think. Main thing I guess I did was, and this is per Peyton's suggestion, as I sent her the painting and the picture, I reshaped them a little bit. I think I had their limbs a little bit thin over here, and I think they definitely match up better. I've left the luminosity, if you will, in their faces a little bit more, which if you were looking at the photo or the picture on the computer, the actual photo I took, not the printout of the photo, it would definitely show better, but I kind of like that. I have subdued the foreground. I had it much more defined, kind of like it is a little more in the photo, but I didn't like it. To me, I wanted it to be about them standing above the clouds and Pikes Peak, and that's, you know, it's nothing I fabricated really. It's all right there. But I believe that's all I did. Just reshape them a little bit more. So as you see, all this stuff, it's just brush strokes. It's just scrubbing and stuff. Even over in here, when you zoom in, you're like, it's just some loose strokes I've just kind of left alone and not tried to fadoodle with it and make it look perfect like rocks. And you know, from a distance, it just kind of works. So the effect of light is there. They're still in shadow, which is what I was trying to accomplish. So there you go. I think I need to look back at the videos. I think it was, I'm trying to say it was under 2 hours maybe total. It's the first one I've done, first painting I've ever done that I videoed all of it. So we'll go back and count, but seems like it was under 2, but maybe a little bit more. I did not gauge in there the sketch, which depending on the size, something like this, it normally takes me 15 minutes or so, maybe 20. If it's a small one, it probably not as much, unless there's a bunch of people in it. This was not a big deal to get the stuff in there. It was mainly all about them. So there's painting, I don't know, I'll call it number 1. I've done a couple, sidetracked me a smidge, but we'll get back at it. I have already worked this one. This is going to be our next one. Worked it in there. I've got a video going on it too. So until next time, there you go.